Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Country Club Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Leo McMahon. Today, our guest is Joe Krenn. He's the general manager of Farmington Country Club in Virginia. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
And thanks for coming on this morning. Or for me, it's nighttime. Uh, I was going over your biography a little bit, and you were a recipient of the James H. Brewer Award in 2018 for your excellent work in the field of club management. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about that award?
Yeah. This award was started many years ago by Bill McMahon and McMahon Group, and it was originally started and it's still continuing. It's an award just to identify and kind of celebrate those in our industry that they feel are making a difference, as I like to say. And it's based on a multitude of things. You have to be nominated by your club president, but also, as you know, with any award, it's really the team's performance and what everybody's doing. So it's recognizing this particular James Brewer Award is the large clubs, which are 600 members or more. And as a total surprise, being nominated, from my club, but it was an honor once I found it out. But we're only as strong as our team, and I think the celebration of what we do and highlighting what the club's doing within the industry to not only for our membership but for the community was an honor. And honestly, at this point, I'm really last 2 years I've been honored that McMahon Group has asked me to kind of chair the award. So now I'm getting kind of the other side of the award where I'm getting to see all the nominations and really starting to read what some amazing things other clubs doing. So then you start to get imposter syndrome of what am I doing in this group when I'm seeing all these
Right.
things that everybody else is doing. And of course, as has been said before by Greg Patterson, in the club business, we look at everybody else's ideas, steal them, call them our own, and laugh all the way to the bank. I'm looking at all these things like, oh, I can do that. I can do that.
Right, 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 right. It's a good position to steal. Well, congratulations on that position.
Thank you.
And then the other award that stands out is Farmington is a member of the Platinum Clubs of America, or
Yes, we are.
Platinum Club status, and you're one of the few clubs in the country. Can you tell us a little bit about that award?
So, and it's sort of like I was talking about the McMahon, but this one really looks at the club. There's a multitude of things that they do to kind of rank based on your club's traditions, based on your facilities and services. There's a whole listing of things that they do, and that group goes out I think it's 3 years now, or every other year. It used to be every 3 years. That goes out and they ask the managers and the presidents of clubs to rank over hundreds and hundreds of clubs within separate categories. And it's really what your peers and also kind of what people know about your club and what you're doing. So anytime you're ranked, it's an honor and people see what you're doing. Um, you know, it's really all I need to
So,
say.
so I'm a retired club manager, and I know how hard your job is, and you make it look easy, and you're being very humble, but you have a hard job, uh, and I don't think people understand sometimes the amount of effort that goes into pulling the whole thing together, and you have to be congratulated because it sounds like Farmington Country Club is a huge operation.
Yes.
Could you,
Yeah.
could you go into Farmington Country Club a little bit and all the amenities that you offer there?
Absolutely. I'll take a step back though, just not Farmington, your comment on what we do for a living or I would say people don't grow up saying they're going to be a club manager. You kind of fall into the business. And when I get asked a lot about what I do for a living and I say I work at a club, people's first reaction is like, oh, that sounds fun. I said, well, wait a minute, I work there. I don't play there. And
Right, right, right.
when they say, well, how to help me understand the club business, and I always say the club business is also, especially a club like Farmington, a large operation, it's almost like we're mayors of small towns, right? You have all your different divisions, and everybody's part of a town for some core basics, but they're all there for different reasons as well. So your job as the leader of that town is to enact what city council, your board states their dues or their taxes, right? Everybody wants clean streets, fire departments, and police, but someone might be there for work, someone else might be there for something else with their family. So really trying to understand what everybody wants, what are the common values of that place, and also how do you move it forward. And if our jobs aren't successful in influencing and hearing and getting city council, the board, to kind of move this thing forward, we get ourselves into some challenging situations. So when I talk about club business and the complexity of it, that usually gets people to start to shake their head and say, okay, I'm starting to understand. It's not just golf, tennis, and kissing babies while they walk into the dining room, right? So,
I know you mentioned a Henry Kissinger quote in one of your biography statements, and it was about making your teammates basically stretch a little further than they think they're capable of. Can you go into that a little bit?
sure thing. I think that's all of our roles, right? And anytime you're in a leadership position, regardless of your title, uh, it's just helping people understand where they can be or what are the possibilities. What is your potential, right? And it's the potential of the operation, potential of the individuals in the operation, whether they're in a management role or just, an hourly employee. It's just really finding and trying to help understand what potential is, what their kind of goals are, but and really just kind of being that coach. I mean, that word is used a lot right nowadays, but advisor, coach, to really see and align where they're trying to be, where the operation can be, and how everything can kind of move in that same goal. And our jobs, in my opinion, yes, there's the day-to-days that the clubs are here to do, but really we're here to create experiences. And I think a lot of people get focused on the experience of the member or the person that's kind of receiving the service. But as well as I do, being in this business for so long, it's the experience of those who are helping provide that is just as important. And every day at the club, I remind members, they always talk about how great the club is and how great and friendly the staff are. And I always say quickly to them, you are part of this. If you didn't treat the staff the way you do in a positive way, it'd be hard for me to keep them here and want to do these things with and for you. So it's just constantly reminding everybody what that culture is. So the Kissinger quote is really helping the organization, helping those around me to see what our potential can be collectively and also individually, and see where there's some kind of alliance there to move this forward.
You know what I always struggled with, and maybe you do too. I knew if the staff wasn't happy, we didn't have a shot, you know.
Right.
And I really focused on the staff a lot. And I think some of the members got upset with me. You should be focusing more on the members. Well, if the staff isn't happy, we don't have a chance.
Yeah.
How do you handle that?
Well, I think it's definitely a balance, and I think understanding that you always say you can't have any favorite children, right? Parents can't have favorite children, but I think it's also showing that while there's no favoritism, there's certain times you've got to focus on certain parts to move something forward, right? So there are times, COVID was a prime example. During COVID, everybody was focused on safety of all, but then really clubs and members started realizing the importance of the club to them, but also in that importance were the people helping provide that safety net, that convenience. So I think that helped kind of relay the message that we're all in this together. And I think the more as a manager we can celebrate and show those things, it shows the importance. And there's no favoritism here, but in order for me to provide the service that you're enjoying with your family, it's important that we take care of this side of the equation, especially if you're in a small town like Charlottesville. And I know there was a question about Farmington, and I'll explain that in a second, but we're in a small town. And, there we are one of the primary recreation places for our members. And they realize that, the labor pool is tight. When we're competing with the University of Virginia, we're competing with all the hospitals. There's a very small labor pool in this town. And in order to provide the services, we've got to be the employer of choice. So that focus and that spotlight at times does need to be on the service providers, but also the service providers or our team need to understand the purpose of what we're here is to provide that experience for that individual. So it's really educating both sides of the equation on a regular basis, the importance of each other, to help make somewhat of an incremental difference that compounds over time, I believe.
Yeah, very, very good answer. Really good answer. Because it is a balancing act and it's not
It
easy.
is. It is. And I always remind people, to the staff when they talk about certain thing, I always remind them, it's like, well, don't forget, I'm an employee too. So this what we're doing here also helps me. It's not just that I'm, this entity, but on the membership side, you know, they have to understand that yes, I'm an employee, but I'm also here I'm the advocate on their side too. So we walk that fine line on a daily basis, and you know, I'd be lying if I didn't say certain times we favored a different side of that equation at different times. But
Right,
ultimately,
right,
if our intent is in our focus is pure, people will see that we're trying to bring it all together.
right. Very, very good.
So real quick, and the
Uh,
question was about Farmington. So Farmington is to me, it's all managers probably say this about their clubs. It's a special place. We have a rich history of the property that we celebrate, but also as a club, we're about to hit our centennial year. So we're really focused on 2027 for our centennial. But as a whole, Farmington is a club that we have 27 holes of golf. We have 15 tennis courts, 3 indoor courts. We have a full fitness center. We have 39 overnight rooms. So
wow.
we're open 24/7. We have people here all the time. We have the various dining venues and things like that. So as a club, we're in a unique position where we actually have more national members than we do resident members. And the way we do that is we have, I'm rounding here, about 1,200 resident members who live within Albemarle County or any county that touches Farmington. I'm sorry, touches Albemarle County. And then if anything outside of that is a national member, and we have nearly 1,700 national,
Wow.
and a lot of that's due to the University of Virginia. A lot of members, their children, or they went to school here. There's a connection to this town. So when they're here, they have a place to stay and recreate and a place to be. We have in full season 500 plus employees.
Wow.
Revenues, it's a $35 million a year operation. So there's a lot of moving parts here. And when I started here, I had a dark set of hair, and now my family reminds me of my gray hair now.
So, how many department heads do you have?
So I have probably 9 or 10 direct reports. Each of them handle various parts of the operation, and that's
Okay.
everything from the day-to-day normal club operations, but there's also IT. There's the marketing slash communications division, and all those kind of places. So it's a busy place.
Now, do you meet with those 10 direct reports as a group once a week or once a month? How do you work that?
So we have a standing every 2 weeks. We have a leadership kind of meeting as with those individuals, and then once once a quarter, I have what's called an all manager meeting, and anybody who's a supervisor or above can attend this meeting. It's kind of a state of the union, talks about what's going on with the club volunteer leaders, talks about the projects going on around the club. Each department head gets up and talks about what's going on in their area, so we all kind of understand the big picture. And then there'll be some type of educational and or group activity that follows that. So that's once a quarter with that group, and that's about 40 people that come to that meeting on a regular basis. And then it's a new kind of concept I developed recently called a leadership council. And really, it's like all the number twos of all the main direct reports plus a couple other individuals. So there's about 20 of those get together once a quarter as well. And we're using that group to advise senior staff, but also uh, come up with, we had something recently where Will Guidara spoke at our national conference, and it was about the details and unreasonable hospitality that matter, and really started me thinking about who owns what area, right? We have a parking lot that the grill's part of. People sometimes call it the golf parking lot. Some people call it something else, but who owns that parking lot? And so from the member experience, who's checking it daily? Is it, and there's the famous saying, if everybody owns it, nobody owns it. And the example I use, the employee parking lot. Hundreds of employees walk through it every day, but there's trash on the ground at times. There's broken lights, whatever it may be, right? So if everybody owns it, nobody owns it. So I took it to this leadership group and said, look, I want you all to come up with a concept of who owns what area, how are we going to monitor it, how are we going to hold each other accountable? And then I said, okay. And they said, well, what's the deliverable? I said, you're all to figure that out. And they looked at me, and it kind of created some uncertainty because you have 20 people. How are we going to do this? Well, what are you looking to present? Come to me in 2 months and present to me what you think I'm looking for. Right. And it really created them to understand how they're going to hold each other accountable, how they're going to meet, what's the deliverable look like. And it was amazing to see the aha moments that started taking place in this leadership council. So meeting with them quarterly, meeting with all the managers quarterly, and then my senior direct reports roughly every 2 weeks.
Now, the senior direct reports, do you meet with them also on an individual basis?
I do. Each one of them has a monthly check-in with me where we'll just kind of sit and talk. If it's golf, I have the director of grounds and green, and my director of golf. We'll have a golf strategy meeting once a month where we'll meet for an hour and just talk about, okay, what's going on in the golf world, and how can I support that, or what do they need me to do to focus on with the board. So I have my monthly check-ins with each individual as well.
Okay. Uh, Very good. So, what was the first dollar you made in the club industry? What job was that?
First dollar in the club industry, again, I said nobody grows up saying I was a lifeguard. I was a lifeguard at a club in Pennsylvania. I grew up in Pittsburgh. The name of the club was Chartiers Country Club, and I had a diabolical plan with all my friends in high school. We took this lifeguarding class together, and we were all going to work together at the local community pool. Well, details matter. What I didn't know was you had to live in that town to work at that pool. So all my friends got to work at that pool, and I was odd man out. Okay, what am I going to do for a job now? And my mother said, "Hey, there's this country club down the road that's always looking for lifeguards." And that was my introduction into the club world.
Interesting. How old were you then?
I would have been at that time 17, 18.
17. And then where'd you go from there in the club industry? I want to try to get a progression up to where you are today.
So I still, even working there, the manager, as we do, the managers are great mentors within our industry. And I think that's one of the special things about our industry. The manager at that club said, you would be pretty good at this club stuff. And I was trying to figure out life. I didn't know really what I wanted to do. And I ended up becoming the next year the pool manager and running the kids' activities and kind of creating that energy at the pool. And
Nice.
the manager said, you should do this. And I was like, I want nothing to do with clubs, a bunch of old people, golf, no, nothing. And he's like, you should consider it. And I reluctantly didn't know what I wanted to do. Ended up going to school at Johnson and Wales University up in Providence, Rhode Island. They had a rec leisure management degree, which sounded fun and easy. It was an associate's degree, and I stayed there to get my bachelor's in hospitality. And while I was in college there, one of the professors came and said, "Hey, there's this club in East Providence called Agawam Hunt. Randy St. John was the general manager there. He needs someone to run their pool, youth activities, camps. You've done this. Maybe you should consider doing this. And by the way, here's this group called the Student Chapter of Club Managers. You should join this group." Went to my first club meeting for the chapter in New England. Had to buy a suit jacket for it. Didn't have that in college. Went to that, and the food and the laughter and the experience. I said, I get to do this once a month if I join this club managers group, and they said yes. So I did that, and honestly, the third meeting in, hey, we need a president. You'd be a great president for our group. So all of a sudden, I was thrown into taking ownership of the group and end up working with Randy at Agawam Hunt, and he really became a really proponent of you really should consider this for a living, and really kind of started investing in kind of being that mentor for me at that time, all the way up through college. Still wasn't sure what I wanted to do, and he sat me down and said, "I think you should consider this club thing." And I was like, "All right, I'll give it a try." And fortunately enough, I kind of threw out my resume, as all students do, being part of the CMAA student chapter. And ended up getting my first opportunity at the Atlanta Athletic Club in Atlanta, under David Shepard and Chris Borders, and they had a PGA Championship coming up, and I thought, I've never been to Atlanta. This sounds like fun. I'll give it a try, and Spent 5 years of my life at the Atlanta Athletic Club going through a manager training program that they had there, kind of progressing through that process, getting heavily involved with the Georgia chapter at that time. Went back to Rhode Island for 2 years to work for a developer because I thought maybe I wanted to try a different side of the business. That was at that time the club was called Carnegie Abbey. Realized after 2 years that the developer world wasn't for me. I love the entrepreneurial spirit, but I'm technically, I look at it as I'm a win-win. I'm always looking for a win-win. And if you have to be an entrepreneur sometimes or a developer, it's a win-lose proposition sometimes. And I struggled with that concept of here I am trying to deliver hospitality, but really at the end of the day, we're trying to achieve all these real estate sales and do all this.
Right, right, right.
I struggled with that personally and I said, this isn't the right environment for me. And at that point, I had another chance to go back to Atlanta
So
to
I'm,
work.
I'm going to cut you off right there for 1 second. What a great start. I mean, what a great start. How lucky you were going from lifeguard to pool manager to Johnson and Wales, and a couple of guys took you under their wing and they cared about you. So I'm thinking in the back of my mind, what was your, growing up, what was your mother and father like? I mean, they steered you in the right direction, it sounded like, you know?
Very blue collar, Western Pennsylvania. Everything's about your name, everything's about doing your best. And, really, um, if you want something, work hard at it and you're going to get it. Just very, very small town, Western Pennsylvania. Love our Pittsburgh Steelers. But really, Italian roots on my mom's side. So family virtues, hard work is kind of what I grew up in, the environment I grew up in.
Yeah, you made a lot of good decisions early on in your life, which has to come from your family, you know?
Well, I would say I would hope, some of that was decision, but it's honestly, I really believe it's some of the industry we work in, but it's really, people are put in your path, and if you look at people who are trying to help you, just listening and giving them the time, and if it weren't for managers taking me under their wing and pushing me or guiding me, maybe I was a little stubborn at first. The Italian side in me comes out a little stubborn. Uh, but it really, I give a lot of credit to those who are in our industry that try to help. And I think if it
Right,
weren't for
right,
them
right,
insisting and pointing, who knows
right,
what would have been doing.
right. Okay, so sorry to cut you off.
Yep.
Keep going now.
Yep. So I went back to Atlanta to work with David Shepard. David Shepard was at the time my club manager at the athletic club. He got the GM job over at Ansley Golf Club, which was a great club in Atlanta with two facilities. And part of it was downtown. The other part was out in the country, which was a championship golf course. So I thought getting a chance to help run an operation with two campuses was kind of a great experience. Back to Atlanta, back to kind of my environment that I knew. So went there, and then shortly after that, I got a great opportunity to go work at Cherokee Town and Country Club, which is in Atlanta, two campuses, very well-known club in our industry. And it was the chance to kind of work with Michael Wheeler there as kind of the town club manager kind of position at that time, and did that for 4 years. Still trying to figure out life, and like I don't know if I still want to do this club thing. I had my CCM at that time. I always joke and say I'm the most reluctant club manager, and here I am still. Um, End up going to get at night school to get my MBA because I was still trying to figure out, is this what I want to do the rest of my life? A lot of people in the world don't know what a CCM is, which I jokingly always say is a chief complaint manager. Um, and get and I got my MBA because I thought I'm going to try something different. And long story short, the opportunity at Farmington Country Club opened up, and my wife was originally we were getting married at the time. We met in Atlanta, but she was originally from Virginia. I didn't know much about Farmington except for it was in Charlottesville. UVA was here. I knew of Farmington. I knew Phil Keister, who was the GM at that time here for, I think, 15 or 16 years. So a lot of good stories about what this club was. And I thought, well, I'll try that. And if that doesn't work, I even told my wife, hey, we'll do this for about 3 years and we'll try to figure this out. And ended up just love the place. I see why managers have been here such a long time. I'm the fifth manager in the club's history. I've been here
Wow.
13 years now, and we've really have a really special place here. So here I am still in the club business, and all goes back to lifeguarding. And I really give a lot of the credit and or blame, depending on which side of the fence you look at, to the managers in our industry who, again, just what we do on a daily basis is reaching out, trying to help others. And then there's those managers out there that just, coming from Western Pennsylvania, I didn't know what really a country club was, except for my small local club. To be working at the places that I've worked on the national stages that I would have been on with PGAs and things like that, I really do give a lot of credit to those individuals who, you know, helped push me to be better than what I knew at that time.
Right, right. Now that I'm retired, I'm coming. I always knew that community and camaraderie and friendship and family were important, and the club was about that.
Mhm.
But now I'm beginning to realize it's really, really, really important, and that's the job that you have every day is to bring a community together, of create fellowship and camaraderie, and it's really important.
And I think it is important. I think like anything else, the day to day, the paper cuts kind of wear on you. And I think the biggest challenge in our industry at the moment is governance, right? We're all going through this governance change, and the NCA and the CMAA are trying to work towards helping better prepare us as managers in that. But dealing with volunteer leaders and setting the future, I think that's probably the challenge. And the paper cuts add up, and that makes our jobs, I think, in our minds harder sometimes than they should be. But if you do focus, like you said, on what matters and what's important, the rest of that we can kind of push aside. Yes, we have our daily duties, and yes, we have our fiscal responsibilities, but at the end of the day, if we're making people feel better about themselves, they're going to be part of what we're doing, whether it's our employees or the membership. So I agree
So
with
I,
you
I
100%.
I I think now's a good time to talk about you're on the advisory board for the Salvation Army,
Yes.
and again, that's the thing that impressed me the most on your entire resume. It was that title. Can you tell us something about that?
Yeah. So Salvation Army in all, like all communities, is usually kind of the safety net of most communities. They provide shelter, they provide food. Those are the two main things that they do in all communities. And then there's other kind of aspects of human welfare kind of things that they provide. So here in our town of Charlottesville, which the city of Charlottesville has 40 or 50,000 people, the Albemarle County that surrounds it has another 100,000 plus. So really, we have 150,000 plus minus people, not including the students at UVA in our community. And like all communities right now, homelessness and getting people back on their feet is a big issue. And as we go through things, so having that all around, I got invited shortly after joining the team here at Farmington to be on the advisory board. And what really opened my eyes is just seeing, you know, the impact or influence that we have with our connections and who we can bring in to help someone else out. Going back to that same theme, seeing something in someone to help them get their feet. And to me, I think there's a lot of great intention welfare social systems that are out there, but sometimes they just try to just give you the band-aid and move you on. I think with the Salvation Army, they really, our saying we say a lot is it's a hand up, not a hand out. And it's really trying to help individuals get back on their feet, putting systems in place, connecting them with certain other services within our community so they can get in our shelter back on their feet. And it's heartbreaking when you go to these shelters and you see the families come in. I mean, that to me was really tugged at my heartstring, is that there's someone that, through no fault of their own, a lot of these times, that just need help, and they need someone to listen and someone to connect them with a person or a service to help them. So when I got asked to be on the board, I said yes. I've been on it since 2014. And we're in the process now of going through a major capital campaign to build a whole new shelter, where right now we have about 60 beds that are full every night. And we're hoping to get that up to at least 100 beds. And then obviously increase our food service and all the other kind of services that come along with that. So um, it's what we do every day in the club business. but in a different kind of mode. And I think if that's where my strength and my gift is, I'm willing to give my time and effort to that.
Yeah, like we were talking before I hit the record button, I'm a member of the Alcoholics Anonymous for 37 years now, and I get to see firsthand the efforts of Salvation Army. And there's members of my group, my home group, that are solid citizens today because of Salvation Army. You know, the Salvation Army was there when they were going through some really hard times, and today they're good people, they're outstanding citizens, and what you're doing is very important.
Okay. Thank you.
And on behalf of them, thank you. Uh, uh, now, who's had the most influence on your whole life? If you had to pick one person or two people.
You know, that is always a hard question, right? Because I think in different stages for different who's in your board of mentors, right? Who's there. Um, you know, obviously growing up, you know, everything from grandparents to parents, you know, it's hard to pick one of those that had the most influence for different reasons. But there's a core group of family members that I think are there. I think if I'm looking in my professional life in the club world, um, I would say the two individuals are Randy St. John, who was that manager in college that really pushed me, and got me to realize that there's an opportunity here that I can be successful in. And he's now become a really good friend. And I would say David Shepard, my club house manager at the time, I ended up working for him as a GM. Now he's the GM of back at the Atlanta Athletic Club. Um, David was another one of those managers that when I would ask a question, it was okay, I'll show you whatever you want to know. You know, Mr. Shepard, I'd like to learn about budgets. Come on in. And I think there was that component that David had a big influence. But also when I was working for David the second go round, the second tour, and then Cherokee came knocking, you know, I'm a very loyal person. And it was hard for me to say, look, I've committed to David and Ansley, and I'm going to do this. And David really sat me down and said, look, you need to take this opportunity. It doesn't come around that often. And yes, it'll hurt us, but for you individually, you have to do this and we're going to be okay. You've already put us on a path. Someone else will be in behind that. And that opened my eyes to like, he could have been so selfish and said, look, you've agreed to be with me the next 3, 4, 5
Right,
years.
right, right.
And he really said, look, take this opportunity. It's the right one for you. He was looking out for me, not himself. And I think that
Right.
always influenced how I feel I approach every day here at the club. So I would
Yeah, it's
say
a good
career wise,
philosophy.
those two individuals, and there's been so many other people in my life that I don't want to discount the managers I worked with or my friends, but if I have to pick those two, the one that really pushed me into the industry and the one that really guided me in the beginning part to show me what it really means, those two had probably the most influence in that regard.
Nice, nice, very good. So, give me your opinion on artificial intelligence and how do you use it at your club today?
So I think artificial intelligence, it's a tool. It could be scary, and there's a lot of things that people look at it, but in our day-to-day lives, if you can have a tool that makes things better or makes you more efficient or makes you more successful, then why wouldn't you use it within reason? So, you know, on a day-to-day basis, I would be lying to you if I didn't say I know my team or even myself are throwing something into a chat GPT saying make this better or help me enhance this. I'm not asking it to write my letter to the membership, but if I need to kind of tweak something, why wouldn't you use a tool? Being smart about it, not putting names in it, not putting certain specific information, because there is an unknown part of it. But I think using it as a tool, we use it in our HR. There's a kind of a chat bot thing where if you have questions about benefits and things like that, some basic information that's out there with every company,
Yeah, great. Yeah, really good.
we're using that. And then I think as our communications team, and we put out a big communication every week, every month to our membership. There's different tools that they use that you can label as AI that kind of helps them, whether it's on the creative design side of things or just more process than anything. We've skimmed down a lot of our processing through AI. Um, so I think it's a tool if it's used the right way. I think too many people, as with anything in the world, are relying on it too much, not checking their work. You hear all the stories about court cases that were fake and I mean, whether you believe that or not, I don't know, but I just think like anything, if you overuse it and don't understand the basis of it, you're going to get caught or you're going to get yourself in a bind. So just be cautious, but embrace it.
Uh, Now, one of the struggles I had was the members. They only wanted to pay so much in dues a year, and my staff. Hey, Leo, we could use a little extra money. Well, how can you help us out here with our compensation packages? And they want to be home with their families. Hey, Leo, can you get me an extra staff member for my department so I can spend a little more time at home? How do you balance all that out?
It's the $1 million question. Education, 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 right? I think it's education on both sides. I keep going on both sides of the equation, I say, but it's education on both sides. The importance of why we need to be here and what we do to the staff member, or how we're going to work towards whatever that goal is, whether it's compensation, whether it's more help, or those pieces. But I also think on the board, finance, the volunteer leader, even the membership side, is just really kind of highlighting and educating industry standards, where things are going, what are sharing with our board and volunteer leaders articles that are out there. And some of them are club specific and some of them aren't, but can you relate that to, hey, if you see this is what's going on in this industry, let me extrapolate that down to our industry and show you kind of what I'm going through and how I'm handling it over here. And I think the more they understand it and are educating on it, the more they're going to work towards a reasonable thing. Now, unfortunately, the last few years, we've all seen wages go through the roof, and our members have seen that everywhere, from Chick-fil-A's in the world to everything else. So they know it's there. I think balancing, okay, this is where we need to be. This is what you see is happening. Here's my plan to get there. That gives them a little more comfort. And sometimes, our expenses have gone up. I mean, it's a compounding effect. That we're in our budget season right now, and I just had a meeting with our finance committee and board leaders on, here's where we are with property taxes. Here's where we are with, the individuals that we buy the pine straw from to do this. They just gave us this wage hike. I mean, this is the compounding effect. Here's where it's relating to us, and this is what we got to do, and this is the why, right? I think getting everybody to focus on the why and what's important, and they have to have trust in you. They have to have trust that you have the best interest of not only the employees, but also the club and the operation. And I think, and there has to be trade-offs. I can provide this, but if I can't get this, then what are we willing to sacrifice over here? And I think it's a constant education, politics. Some people call it politics, but to me, it's just constantly highlighting the need, the importance, the why. And sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. It's getting the employee to trust you that I'm working on your behalf to get you to where you need to be. We made a big decision years ago of trying to find a 5-day work week, right? Now, 5 days doesn't mean it's Monday to Friday, you're off 2 days on a weekend, but we made a big effort and we let the team know that we are going to try to get you a 5-day work week. There will be on occasion, the holidays or extreme cases that you're going to be asked to do a little extra, but our goal and our commitment is a 5-day work week. However, that's worked out within your department. And then I also encourage the department heads every 5 weeks or so, make sure someone gets a weekend, right? Everybody wants a weekend. Even if you signed up to be in this business, to say to your family or your friends, hey, in 3 weeks, we can go here to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
Conscious effort. So we did this 6-7 years ago of try to get a 5-day work week. Sometimes, holiday season, sometimes you got to put a little extra in, but most people don't mind doing that if they know they got the other things going. And we do our best to try. It doesn't always work to get at least those individuals who work every weekend, a weekend off within some type of cyclical process. And then some
Right,
people just like working weekends because that's the time they have, and that's okay.
right, right. Yeah, I always thought that the members thought I was too much on the employee side, and the employees always thought I was too much on the board side.
So you're winning.
uh, so what else did I want to talk about? I think that's it. You know, this is the first time I've ever met you, and what I'm starting to see through all these interviews and podcasts is guys like you get off to good starts. You right out of the gate, you were moving in the right direction. You know, where some people it takes them till they're 30 years old or 35 years old to figure out where they want to go in life. It seems like the successful ones get moving right away in the club business. You know.
Well, I think some of it gonna is some of it's dumb luck. Some of it is just something inside you. And I'll quote one of my previous directors of golf when I was interviewing here. Um, he was getting to know me as the interview process, and he said, he goes, "You grew up in Southwest Pennsylvania, so that's that good old, work culture, blah blah blah." He goes, "So you have a PhD?" And I said, "No, actually, I just got my MBA." He goes, "No, no, no, you are poor, hungry, and driven." And I said, "Yep, I have a PhD." So I think a lot of people have a lot of PhDs.
So, if you had to pass on any advice to 21-year-olds starting out in the club business, what would you tell them?
Well, I have a whole list of kind of things I talk to college students, but I think the two top ones I always highlight is, and Chris Borders is the one at the Atlanta Athletic Club, icon in the industry. He had this saying that I'm sure that you've all heard it different ways, but I heard Chris say to me, um, "Don't chase the title or the money, let it chase you." And he was big on, get your name out there, do what you're doing.
That's a really good one. That's a really good one.
And I think that's people lose sight. So I talk a lot about what that kind of means, but I also say, in that process is there's kind of three components in our life that, there's our dream job, there's where we want to be aspirationally and kind of where we're at. And then there's, the kind of reality of where you are. So there's the dream job, the dream life, and kind of where you're at. And sometimes those gears are going to work in line with each other. Sometimes they're not. But ultimately, if you know who you are and you know kind of where you want to be, when that next job opportunity comes, forget the title, along, with Chris Porter's line, forget the title, look at the responsibilities, because there's a lot of people that have the same title out there that don't have the near responsibilities. And are those responsibilities and duties going to get you that next opportunity? And I think the more you put in and put into, there's this big debate on work-life balance. Everybody has their different take on it. I call it work-life kind of synergy, but really it's counterbalance. And the best way I heard this described for someone starting in the business is you can have balance and be average, but nobody talks about the average, right? They talk about the extreme successes or the extreme wealth or the extreme, athlete. But the reason they get there is because they sacrifice something to get there, but it doesn't mean you sacrifice it your whole life. So if you're starting out in your career, there's going to be a counterbalance. If you're all in, you've got to be all in and make sacrifices and focus on what's going to get you to that next point. So then when you get to the point to focus on family, you can then be all in on family for a point. But there has to be counterbalance because nobody's great at either. You wouldn't be great at your family if you were just average. You wouldn't be great at your job if you were just average. So there's times in your life that you have to have that counterbalance. And I think so many people get caught up in the ideal, and social media does this. Everybody thinks we're living their best lives, but really they don't see what's going on when you turn off that camera. And I just think focus on not the title, not the money, focus on what this is going to do to give you opportunity, look at the duties, and understand there are sacrifices. And the more sacrifices you make in one direction at first, that means the greater gain. So you can then start making a sacrifice on another part of your life to get a greater gain on the other side. So that wasn't a quick answer, but that's kind of my two talking points that I can give anybody young advice to just really know who you are, know what's important to you, and know that there will be sacrifices, but make calculated sacrifices on each of those.
So, when you said you were a 24/7 operation, my mind immediately went to, have you gotten any phone calls at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning? Hey, you got to come in. We got a problem here.
Luckily, those have been very few. We do have a great kind of system put in here and a great kind of way we do it. It's usually emergencies, like if, the fire alarm or something like that. But typically, and the way, again, it's my board understands, my club understands being open all the time, and you can't be here all the time. So we really have kind of a team management concept here. So every week or weekend, and Phil Keister started this before I got here, and I've just carried it on. is we have a MOD, and it's a superintendent. It could be a different manager. It could be the rackets director. It could be a head of housekeeping, but everybody takes turns that weekend being the manager on duty. That way, when anything happens, they get the call, but also they know they come in on Sunday from 9 to 2. They're the eyes and ears if anybody needs anything, because at that point, prior to that, what Phil realized, it was either him or his AGM that were getting all the calls all the time. So they really started kind of spreading that management network around. So I really don't get a lot, knock on wood. Usually it's an emergency situation, or the power's out or the heat's down. We got to figure this out. But we have a pretty good management structure that I'm not the first call.
Right, right. Good. Uh, Now your clubhouse, we'll wrap it up with this. Thomas Jefferson designed part of your clubhouse?
Yes, thank you. So what I said earlier, there's the club's history and then there's the property history. And I think to me, that's why I find it, I always say it's a special place, because it really is a special place in that regard. So the original property goes back to the 1700s. The original house, which is part of our main clubhouse, was built in 1780. And then in 1803, the owners that were here at the property were really good close friends with Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson not grew up, but he lived here in Monticello, in Charlottesville. He was friends with the owners, and then Thomas Jefferson was also an architect. So while he was sitting president in 1803, he designed and was kind of building the first addition put onto our clubhouse, which is what we call the logo over my head there, the Jefferson Room. And then there was what we call dependency wing, which were guest rooms, the dairy, the laundry, and kind of that area, the kitchen of the main house. He was kind of doing that while president. So I always say he had a side hustle of being an architect while he was running the country. But his touches are here, and Thomas Jefferson, to have that as our first edition put onto the clubhouse and run a property, to me, that's from 1700s till today, it's pretty unique. And you walk in that every day, and there's lots of stories about him and Madison staying here. And if you're a history buff, it's kind of a cool place to be. But
Right,
separating the club's history from American history, there is a blend there, but it's kind of a unique property and history that we always balance. Are we talking about the club's history or the property's history? And there's a difference there as well. So managing that is also a unique experience. And it's a special place. If you're ever here, please come visit. I mean, it really is a special place.
It sounds like a great place. Yeah, a lot going on there, a lot of history.
Mm-hmm.
So, Joe, this has been great. I want to wish you the best of luck, in the upcoming years, and keep helping your staff out, and thank you for everything you do for the Salvation Army. Thank you.
Thank you for highlighting, the people in our industry and what we do, because the more, as you said, the more you get into it, the more you see we're all the same. And there's some pretty unique individuals out there that are making a difference.
Thank you, Joe, and have a good day.
All right, thank you.